Hey, welcome back to Presidential Madness. Huge bout of the night tonight. Barack Obama, first African-American president of the United States, goes up against James K. Polk, one of the most noted and notorious slaveholding presidents. Whoa! We'll preview that along with the 15 other matches in the round of 32. If you haven't been here yet, we have resurrected the presidents of the United States, put them in a 44-man tournament, cage matches, to decide who was the toughest president of the United States. I'm Mark Haggard. 3 decades in the classroom, 3 decades on the sidelines. I'm a history teacher, and I'm going rogue. Alongside his AP history teacher, government teacher, basketball coach, state champion, tennis coach, and former cage fighter, Macho Man Dan Young. How are you, Dan?
I'm doing very well this day. I'm ready for these matches to get started. I think we got some good matchups, and it's going to be a fun one.
Well, I'm looking forward to tonight. Not a lot of time, though. Can't get into the story about how you once knocked a guy out with just this. We've got a lot to get to. Second round, 16 matches. The first 20 presidents got byes. So now we get into Washington, Jackson, Lincoln, Grant. What I think is going to be most interesting is those earliest presidents is not so much how they respond to their opponents, but to things like how do they respond to television or cars or modern architecture. You know, they're going into buildings that hold 50,000 people. That may very well be more people in one place than they've ever seen in their entire lives.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting one to see how they adapt to their new surroundings. I think some will handle it pretty well. Others might be a little shaky.
It might be a shock to them. You know, hey, before we get into our matchups, we want you to subscribe to History Teacher Gone Rogue. Click on the bell so you know when we ring the bell on our matches. We appreciate your comments as well. Join the conversation. Hey, speaking of, each bout was scored by a panel of 5 prominent coach historians. Dan and I included, along with our friends Rob Doring, the fight doctor Dave McDonald, and Jason Taylor. Actually, I've never met Jason. Dan, you know Jason?
Not a clue who he is, but Dave McDonald, the fight doctor, says he's a worthy component.
Seems like a good guy. Hey, Dave, next time you're in this part of the world, bring Jason along. We'll get some hot wings. All right, Casey's giving us the finger. It's the circle finger, so let's go to the West Region, Salt Lake City. Richard Nixon, after defeating Calvin Coolidge, fights James Madison. Madison, the shortest of all the presidents, at 5'4", and good thing, because the British were closing on Washington, D.C. during the War of 1812. A few British bullets went whizzing over his head. Imagine if he was 5'10".
It'd been over quick.
Nixon, not overwhelming at 5'11", 180, but that gives him a size advantage over little Jimmy. How do you like our first match in the SLC?
You know, I see this one. Patrick Henry was arguably one of the best orators in the United States during this time period. James Madison took him down, but too bad for this one. It's not a debate. We got Nixon taking him down in a physical match. I
don't think Madison holds much of a chance against Tricky Dicky.
Nope.
Underneath them in the open bracket, no play-in match, Abraham Lincoln versus Andrew Johnson. 2 guys that know each other. Does familiarity breed contempt?
It's going to be an interesting one. Like Rob Doring says, when Andrew Johnson throws a left hook, is Lincoln going to remember to duck?
Still too early. We spent a lot of time talking about Lincoln's wrestling background, a lot of length at 6'4". Johnson assumed the presidency after Lincoln's assassination. First president to be impeached, not convicted though. Johnson may be looking to clear his name. At 5'10", he gives away 6 inches. So how does he beat the great emancipator?
I don't see him beating him in this one. Lincoln, like we've talked about, state champion wrestler. Actually, Johnson, he dropped out of school. He didn't get the chance to refine his skills in high school wrestling like Lincoln did. So I see Lincoln taking this one.
Gerald Ford versus James Monroe. Did Ford waste too much energy trying to pummel the entire state of Ohio on behalf of Michigan?
I think he's going to be a little worn out, but I don't think it's going to come into play here.
Come on, Michigan. It was only Toledo. Not well known, not given his due in the history books. I like James Monroe. Number 5 fought alongside George Washington in the Revolutionary War. He's the guy rowing the boat in the Washington Cross and the Delaware painting. Then wounded at the Battle of Trenton later that day. Hitman, great matchup here.
Yes, this one, I like it. As we mentioned, James Monroe, he actually dropped out of high school to go fight the Redcoats. That's the kind of guy and the type of tenacity that I want to see in the octagon.
That's fanaticism. I love it. On the bottom of the region, Chester A. Arthur versus Zachary Taylor. Civil War versus Mexican War. Generally from the same time period, not the contrasting styles we've seen previously. Arthur tipping the scales at 224, Taylor 238. Seems like all the heavyweights were put in the same bracket. I think this is a great second-round matchup. You'd hope to see this more maybe in a Sweet 16 or a regional final. Your thoughts?
I think Chester Arthur, I don't think he's going to be able to hold on to this one. He was kind of lucky. The only reason he's president was because of an assassination. He didn't get elected. And Zachary Taylor, he was one of the most ruthless guys, as we mentioned before.
Yeah.
I see Taylor taking this one.
Oh, yes. In the Midwest, still in Indianapolis, these matches are going to be better than the first-round matches. Or not. Lyndon Johnson versus Thomas Jefferson. The fight doctor, Dave McDonald, reminds us Jefferson's a writer, musician, and a thinker. A brawler from West Texas, he ain't. If this was a debate, I'd go with number 3. But this is not a debate. Jefferson, 6'2", taller than most people think. LBJ, 6'2.5", and has 20 pounds on Jefferson. You're going with Jefferson.
I am. As I mentioned before, I like all the background and all the research that Lewis and Clark have done getting Jefferson prepped for this one. He has all that information to use against his opponent.
Yeah.
Yep.
I like Johnson. I see Johnson going deep into the bracket here. Open bracket, no play-in game. Both these guys fresh. James Buchanan versus Ulysses S. Grant. The guy that let the Civil War start versus the guy that ended the Civil War. Makes me wonder how Grant is going to do without a never-ending supply of young soldiers to throw against his opponent. What's your thoughts?
I think this one comes down to Grant pretty much throws Buchanan in a chokehold, calls him Nancy, whispers that into his ear right before he chokes him out.
I'm not sure he's going to need that much against Buchanan, whom many historians call the worst president of the United States. Jimmy Carter versus John Quincy Adams. I like Jimmy Carter, as you know, graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy, Sunday school teacher, nuclear physics. David Banner, ready to go all Hulk. But the fight doctor, Dave McDonald, says not so fast. John Quincy Adams had a murderer's face, murderer's eyes, and a murderer's haircut. Adams exercised 2 to 5 hours a day, which scholars say was his way of torturing himself for not being perfect. He also soaked in ice baths and rubbed his body down with a horsehair mitten, which was painful as hell. If he brings that passion to the fight with you, you can assume that he's going to punch directly through you, then punch through whatever ground you were standing on, then punch any memories out of your existence, and then punch himself a few times for not beating you quite hard enough. Do you see it the same way?
I see it coming down that same way. A couple fun facts about Adams here. He enjoyed early morning workouts, and you mentioned the bathtubs, right?
Yeah.
He actually had a pet alligator in the White House bathtub. That's the kind of guy that I want to see in the octagon.
I tell you, I'm still going with Carter on that one. Teddy Roosevelt versus Martin Van Buren. I was making a big deal about Van Buren being Dutch. Then I remembered Roosevelt's Dutch as well. So that's a push. Van Buren spent his career cleaning up Andrew Jackson's messes. Does this help him against Teddy Tough?
I don't think so. Van Buren actually, in his own autobiography, failed to mention his wife and his presidency. I think after this match, just like he forgot those fun facts, we're going to forget that he was even part of this.
And I think Teddy's going to help him forget this match altogether. In the South, in Orlando, Florida, John Kennedy versus John Adams. Adams called Jefferson a bunch of names in the 1800 campaign. Sounds like Kennedy may have a couple of cracked ribs from the FDR fight. Does that give Adams any chance?
I don't think Adams has much of a chance here. He was actually a defense attorney for the British soldiers during the Boston Massacre. That's not a guy that I want seeing fight in the octagon. At the same time, JFK, he was read his last rites 3 times, lived to talk about it all 3 times after that.
Open bracket, both fighters fresh. Franklin Pierce versus Rutherford B. Hayes. Pierce, one of these guys ignored in the history books, but he's got an intriguing backstory.
Yes, he does. He was a guy that quite enjoyed his evening cocktails. And on the other side of that, we have Hayes, who was in favor of prohibition. He put that into place. So I think Pierce takes out some retributions for trying to take all of his booze away.
Well, I think it'll take more than an intriguing backstory to defeat Rutherford Willie Mays Hayes. Let's go down to the beneath that. Ronald Reagan versus Andrew Jackson. Reagan threw a bunch of punches against William Howard Taft to get him out of the tournament. He is going to be gassed. You consider Jackson to be a favorite. Defeated the Creek at the Battle of Horseshoe Bend, the British at New Orleans, defeated the Spanish in Florida. Does Ronnie Reagan, does he have a chance, or is this just the opening round of a deep run for Old Hickory?
I think this is the opening run for a deep round. There's a gentleman by the name of Charles Dickinson. He was known as one of the best shots in Tennessee. Okay, we have Jackson taking him down in a duel. Reagan was an actor. I don't think he has much of a chance. We got Jackson taking this one pretty quick.
Not going to be able to act his way out of this one.
No, he's not. Nope.
Yeah. Eisenhower versus John Tyler. Ike taken to the limit by Harry Truman. John Tyler with the bye as the 10th president, but no military experience, lifetime politician. He was a frail hell, thin, and prone to diarrhea. He didn't even win a presidential election. Rather, he was William Henry Harrison's vice president. Any thoughts on that match?
Yes, I do. Eisenhower is one tough dude. He is willing to do anything he can to get what he wants.
And in the East Region, Syracuse, New York, Benjamin Harrison versus number 1, George Washington. Harrison, not a pushover, is he? Washington, the sentimental favorite. You know, he just looks like an athlete at 6'2", 180 pounds, like a chiseled Greek god. Yeah. Could probably play tight end in the NFL today. I mean, damn. I know what Martha was thinking. Harrison, though, blind draw, bummer for number 1.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I see Harrison maybe squeaking one round out of this one, but Washington goes through.
Take Washington. Yeah. All right, open bracket, James Garfield versus Millard Fillmore. Who you got?
Garfield, everything I've looked into, is a 19th century hippie. He actually wanted to run away from everything, go sailing, spend the rest of his life on a ship. Fillmore, I see he was actually a man of action. There was a fire in the White House. He himself put out that fire.
Wow.
Also, he didn't have a vice president. He didn't need someone to help him with the job, just like he doesn't need anyone to help him with the job in this fight.
So you're going with?
I'm going with Fillmore.
Fillmore. All right, William McKinley versus William Henry Harrison. I'm going for Tecumseh.
Yeah, McKinley, he had a kind of a rough growing up. I guess not necessarily growing up, but within his personal lives. He had 2 daughters at the age of 2 and 4 die within a 2-year span. That's tough for anyone to have to fathom. Along with that, his wife had epilepsy. Every time she had an epileptic seizure in public, he simply put a handkerchief over her face, let her wait it out. Wow. Okay, he's got some background. He's got some old bones in the yard to dig up, and really come through with this fight. Yeah,
tough place to be. The fight doctor, Dave McDonald, tells us William McKinley looks like a guy that you could punch in the face and he would like it. My heart says go for William Henry Harrison, the hero of Tippecanoe. Sadly, he spoke too long at his inauguration, got sick, died 1 month later. I think Harrison takes advantage of the new opportunity to make a name for himself in this tournament.
That's a good possibility, but myself, I'm going with McKinley.
All right. And this is the one we had talked about. This is Barack Obama versus James K. Polk. This match moved to primetime on the East Coast because of the intrigue. You hit it on the head after Obama won his first-round match against Cleveland. Now you've got the first African-American president of the United States squaring off against noted slave owner Jimmy Polk. Polk actually initiated a war with Mexico for the sole purpose of expanding slavery. I wonder if Polk will just be flat out startled to discover that there has been an African-American president of the United States. That's got to be shock and awe for the mid-19th century slave owner.
Absolutely. Along with that is I see Obama, for a 4-year stretch of his life, he lived about 1,000 miles away from Manila. He's going to use his experience, that fighting experience he learned by watching the Thrilla in Manila, and take that out on Polk.
Maybe I see it a little differently. I see Obama maybe drawing a red line and Polk walking all over it. I think his time with the Choom Gang in Honolulu, the residual THC, I think that's going to catch up to him. Polk, he's my sleeper, and I'm not saying that because I condone his policies. Young Hickory, Tennessee guy, pride of the University of North Carolina, frontier guy in the mold of Sam Houston, Davy Crockett, trained under Andrew Jackson, similar build to Jackson. He's going to rely on quickness and just keep coming after Obama. You know, not well known historically because he promised to only serve 1 term, and he stuck by his promise. I mean, he says he's going to do something, right or wrong, and he falls through. I like that guy. So, Hitman, awesome matches in the round of 32. Can't wait to see these guys get after it. Like we said, subscribe and click the bell so you know when we ring the bell on our matches, and comment on them. We may be wrong. Dan, any last thoughts?
Yeah, I'm just really pointing out one guy that we talked a little bit about, but James Monroe, he was Washington's right-hand man crossing the Delaware. I think he could have a deep run coming to this tournament with that experience, fighting those redcoats, everything that Washington build him up. I think that he's building him up in this bracket as well.
Yeah, I have to agree wholeheartedly on that one. Okay. Hey, thanks for coming by. Hope you had fun. We sure did, but we won't quit our day jobs. I want to thank our producer, Casey Moulton, and thank Mr. Brent Allen for letting us borrow his studio here on the campus of Columbia High School. And next time you see 2 dead presidents getting into fisticuffs, remember me. I'm Mark Haggard. I'm a history teacher, and I'm going rogue.